Hello, good people. Happy Worship Wednesday here from The Walk. Well, we are here to continue journeying with you through the Gospels in this Christmas season. Last week, we talked about the book of Matthew, which highlighted the genealogy of Jesus and how he came to fulfill the prophecies that were spoken throughout the Old Testament. And this week, we want to step into the next book chronologically, which is the book of Mark. Now, the book of Mark is actually the shortest gospel. It has 16 chapters. And with it being 16 chapters, the book of Mark is straight to the point. Mark actually was not a disciple per theologians who have done research. Mark was actually, to some, he was known as John Mark, who was a co-worker with Paul, which that is explained in Colossians 4:10 and 2 Timothy 4:11. And then some also say that he was a close partner with Peter, which is explained in 1 Peter 5:13. In the book of Mark, we see that Mark introduces Jesus as the Messiah. It says that he is the Son of God. And so in the first half of Mark, we see the power of Jesus using his authority. And then in the second half of the book of Mark, we see Jesus walking out his mission as the Messiah. And so when we think about Jesus's authority, you can find that in chapter 1, verses 21 through 22, where he's teaching in the synagogues, or you can look in chapter 1, verses 23 through 24, when demons understand Jesus's authority, or you can look in chapter 2 verses 10 through 11, where Jesus is healing a lame man, or chapter 2 verses 27 through 28, where he was healing on the Sabbath and the Pharisees had a problem with it. Also, we see Jesus using his authority in chapter 3, verses 21 through 29, where Jesus responds to the people and the Pharisees in how they believe in his authority. When we think about Jesus walking out his role as a Messiah, he let it be known that he came to be a servant. He wasn't coming to be served, but he was focused on being a servant. And we see that in chapter 8, verses 31 through 33, as well as chapter 9, verses 30 through 31, and then chapter 10, verses 32 through 34. He specifically says it to be a servant, not to be served, in chapter 10, verses 45. And then last but not least, the highlighted theme of Jesus being and calling out the call to discipleship, that is in chapter 8 of verses 34 through 36, where he says take up your cross. And then also chapter 10 verses 29 through 30, where it says blessings will also come with persecution. And so Jesus is our example of how to walk out discipleship. He is our example in how to walk out and be the light that he's called us to be here on earth. As we saw last week in the book of Matthew, the call to commission to be a light in the world and to be salt on earth, Jesus was then that example throughout the book of Mark. And so I want to encourage you, as you take time this week and lean into the book of Mark, seeing how Jesus walked out his authority and how persecution and his suffering and death actually came so that our sins could be forgiven, and so that we didn't have to receive the consequences that we should receive. The book of Mark will allow you to then see the power of Jesus and see how he walked out his call from the Father with full authority. And so as you lean in this week, I hope that God speaks to your heart and what that looks like for you. How can you mirror Jesus as your example as you walk in the paths that God has called you to here on earth? So I want to encourage you to lean into the book of Mark in this season, lean into the Gospels as we continue to navigate it, and know that as you show up and read all about Jesus, that God can then have a conversation with you, and you can continue to believe that the best is yet to come. Have a good one.